Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Megan, and today I'm going to be discussing the movie I saw last night called The Family McMullen. It was only in theaters for one day, and it looked really good in the trailer, so I wanted to go see it. So this movie is actually a sequel from the 1995 movie, The McMullen Brothers. I have not seen that movie, so if you have seen that, then you'd be familiar with some of the McMullen family members. I will say, watching this movie, it started off really interesting because the vibe gives me a theater vibe. The way that some of the actors move in the scenes and the way that the dialogue is, it kind of gives me like theater-esque with some of the mannerisms, but also, even though it's set in modern day, and I know that they're an Irish Catholic family, and so sometimes, and they live in New England. I think they live in New York or Boston. I don't know. They're from the New England area. And even that the way that they dress, I feel like I was watching something from like the 80s or like the 90s. So when one of the kids brought up like social media, I'm like, social media? I was like, they don't necessarily dress like that, but I just don't know if that is just the way that people like dress in New England in the wintertime, or if that is just like the Irish Catholic in them in terms of the way that they were dressing with like the collared shirts. And I know it was Thanksgiving, so it had like a Thanksgiving vibe, but the daughter, she is just very like put together. I'm trying to remember who she kind of like reminds me of, but she's just very like proper, put together, a nice young woman. And she brings home her boyfriend, who they end up getting engaged the day before. And so she hasn't been with any other man besides this guy, and they're probably in their like mid 20s at least. And so her Aunt Molly, who's played by Connie Britton, she puts the idea in your head that you need to be sleeping with more than one person before they get married. And so the daughter isn't like very much like that. Like she knows who she wants to spend the rest of life with, and that's her current boyfriend. And so when her aunt says that, her fiance, it got in his mind like, oh my gosh, like maybe we need to see other people or be with other people before we need to come back together. And so they end up like, she doesn't necessarily agree with it, but she like goes along with it because she knows she wants to spend the rest of her life with this guy. And so he brings it up that like, okay, maybe we, for a month, we should go out, other dates, go sleep with other people before, you know, us being together or whatever. And she's just like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that at all. So she ends up going back to her dad's house, later decides to sleep with a childhood friend who ends up being the plumber, because she ended up ruining the sink. So the dad called the plumber, and it was just like it was actually the guy who gave her first kiss that spun the bottle when they were like in middle school or something. And so he like asks her out on a date, and so she ends up going on a date, but then she's like brutally honest. She's like, tomorrow's the day I get back with my fiance because of this month or whatever thing. And so he's like, oh, he's like, you're using me. And then she's like, yeah, but she's like, I don't really want to do this, because they end up kissing, but she's just like, I like don't want to do this. And he's like, you don't have to like pretend or, you know, do something that you don't even want to do. And then she like stands there and she's like, we are doing this. And so it's like super like awkward at first. And then she gets up, 'cause she's like, I can't stay here the entire night. So she like gets up from the bed, and then she like leaves, and then she like goes back, and she's crying when she gets back to the house, and her aunt is there. And Rand's like, what's wrong? And she's just like, I don't even want to talk to you anymore. Like, because she feels so guilty about the night. And then everyone doesn't really like her fiance and her family. So her dad is just like, I don't want to know this information. But he's like, this is probably not the best way to get rid of him. But if he's like no longer in the picture, the dad is just like, I'm okay with that. And so the dad kind of he knows who he knows who he hired for the plumbing. And because she's like, Dad, you know, this is so-and-so. He's like, yeah, he's a nice guy. And he's a cute or a good looking guy. And so it was just kind of interesting how the dad kind of like weaseled his way in of like, oh, this is the nice guy, this is that. he's not necessarily, you know, in the same like industry as maybe her and her fiance. But like I said, he's just like a nice guy who could like treat her right. And so it's just kind of interesting on how her fiance wants to get back to her at the month, but she's just like, I need time to think about this. She's like, I had a great night last night. Like, I don't even know like what to do or whatever. And then she's like, you know what? I know what to do. Because her fiance or anyone she is going to marry would never say, hey, let's sleep with other people before we get married. Like, she has like standards and her morals and everything. So it was just really interesting to see her be heartbroken, but also realize, like, come to realization herself that if the person she wants to marry would really value her, they wouldn't be even doing these actions or like convincing you that you need to do this. Because even after she did it, she felt guilty about it. But in the end, she realized that the other guy would treat her very well and she likes him. And so it was just an interesting realization. And I don't know, it was just like kind of cute. Like, the writing was pretty smart in terms of you can probably watch this with your family. It isn't like super raunchy or anything like that, but the way that they talk about certain issues and relationships with each other is like respectable, but not like crass or anything. Like, I don't know, there was just like an even keel line where it wasn't necessarily cringy if the father and son were talking about sleeping with other women, or even, you know, the girl. Like, it was just, I don't know, it was just the way that it was written and everyone was talking about these personal things was done in such a nice way, which I don't really see it done in movies or I don't see it done well in this movie, in other movies. Just the way that everything was approached. And it had this like theatrical vibe to it. And so maybe I wonder if that was like the theatrical like acting part. Like the son, the guy who played the son, he was in Home Again with Reese Witherspoon. I wonder if he comes from theater, because he has, unless it's just like his New York voice or something, but he has like this theatrical, like old school, like acting style. And so his character and the girl he falls in love with is super cute in it as well. I just think overall it was a great movie. It gives me the Family Stone, Surviving Christmas, like Because I Said So vibes. And if you like those type of movies, I think you would definitely like this movie, especially if you saw the 1995 version, because this is a sequel. That's it for this video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.